Welcome, brave souls, to another spine-chilling tale from the Nightmare Maestro. Tonight, we delve into the dark underbelly of urban life, where a simple online ad can become a gateway to terror. Have you ever scrolled through Craigslist, eyes heavy from a late-night internet binge, and stumbled upon an offer too good to be true? In the digital age, where strangers connect with the click of a button, danger lurks behind every innocuous post. Buckle up, for this is a story of the Rideshare Roulette, where a Craigslist ad leads to a game where every passenger could be your last, and the stakes are higher than you could ever imagine. The clock on Jake's laptop blinked 1:15 a.m. as he scrolled mindlessly through Craigslist's gigs section. His eyes, heavy with fatigue, skimmed past the usual requests for movers, dog walkers, and amateur photographers. Jake had been desperate for extra cash ever since losing his day job, and rideshare driving barely covered his bills. Just as he was about to call it a night, a post caught his eye. Urgent, night driver needed. One shift, big money. Must be open-minded and ready for anything. $2,000 cash for 3 hours of work. Serious inquiries only. Jake's heart raced. $2,000 for 3 hours of driving. It had to be too good to be true. But desperation has a way of clouding judgment, and before he knew it, his cursor hovered over the reply button. With a deep breath and a silent prayer, he clicked. The response was almost instantaneous, as if someone had been waiting. A chill ran down Jake's spine as he read the instructions. Drive to the industrial district, park at the abandoned warehouse on 13th and Elm, wait in your car with the doors unlocked. Your first passenger will arrive at 2:37 a.m. exactly. Do not be late. Do not ask questions. Complete the job, and the money is yours. Jake's instincts screamed at him to delete the email and forget he ever saw it. But the promise of easy money was too tempting to resist. With trembling hands, he grabbed his keys and headed out into the night, unaware that he was about to become a pawn in a terrifying game. The clock on Jake's dashboard blinked 2:37 a.m. as he sat parked in front of the abandoned warehouse, his heart pounding in his chest. The industrial district loomed around him, a maze of shuttered buildings and empty lots. A cold breeze whistled through a crack in his window, carrying with it the acrid smell of rust and decay. As the seconds ticked by, Jake's nerves began to fray. Had he fallen for some sick joke? Just as he was about to start the engine and flee, a figure emerged from the shadows. Jake's blood ran cold as the back door opened, and a man slid into the seat behind him. "Evening," the stranger said, his voice a low rasp that sent chills racing down Jake's spine. Or should I say, good morning? A chuckle followed, devoid of any real mirth. Jake's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, trying to catch a glimpse of his passenger's face. All he could make out was the glint of eyes watching him intently, reflecting the dim light like a cat's in the darkness. "Where to?" Jake asked, his voice betraying a slight tremor. "Just drive," the man replied, his tone brooking no argument. "I'll direct you as we go." Every instinct screamed at Jake to refuse, to kick this stranger out and speed away into the night. But the memory of the promised payment kept him rooted to his seat. With trembling hands, he put the car in drive and pulled away from the curb, plunging deeper into the foggy night. They drove in tense silence for what felt like hours, the fog growing thicker with each passing minute. Jake's eyes darted between the road and the rearview mirror, where he could feel the stranger's gaze boring into him. Finally, the man spoke. "Do you like games, Jake?" Jake's blood ran cold. He hadn't told the passenger his name. What kind of games?" he stammered. A low chuckle filled the car. Oh, the fun kind. The kind where the stakes are life-changing. There was a pause, then the sound of something metallic being drawn from a pocket. We're going to play a little game I call Rideshare Roulette. The rules are simple. I'll give you a series of destinations. At each one, you'll pick up a new passenger. Your job is to figure out which one doesn't belong. Jake's mouth went dry. And if I refused to play, the unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked echoed through the car. Then the game ends before it begins, and you lose by default. Trust me, Jake, you want to play. Winners get to walk away. Losers, well, let's just say they take their last ride. Jake nodded slowly, his voice barely audible as he whispered, "I'll play." "Excellent," the man purred. "Then let the games begin. Your first stop awaits, Jake. And remember, in Rideshare Roulette, every choice could be your last." The fog parted just enough for Jake to see the dilapidated motel looming before them. Neon lights flickered weakly, casting a sickly glow over the cracked pavement of the parking lot. The vacancy sign blinked erratically, each flash revealing graffiti-covered walls and boarded-up windows. "Pull in here," the man instructed, his voice dripping with anticipation. "Your first passenger awaits." Jake's hands shook as he guided the car into a parking space. A figure emerged from one of the rooms, moving with an unnatural, jerky gait that sent shivers down Jake's spine. As it approached, he could make out a woman in a tattered dress, her hair wild and unkempt. She slid into the back seat without a word, bringing with her the musty scent of decay and something else, a cloying sweetness that reminded Jake of overripe fruit left too long in the sun. The smell filled the car, threatening to choke him. Jake's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror, and he had to stifle a gasp. Her gaze was vacant, unfocused, as if she wasn't really there at all. But deep within those glassy eyes, he caught a flicker of something ancient and hungry. "Drive," the man commanded, and Jake obeyed, pulling back onto the foggy street. The motel disappeared behind them, swallowed by the mist as if it had never existed. The silence in the car was oppressive, broken only by the woman's ragged breathing. As they drove, Jake became aware of a faint scratching sound coming from the back seat. He glanced in the mirror to see the woman's fingers, unnaturally long and tipped with jagged nails, slowly dragging across the upholstery. The man's voice cutthroaty trao. "Tatisar." "Remember, Jake, observe carefully. Your life depends on making the right choice." The next stop brought them to a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town, a beacon of harsh fluorescent light in the oppressive darkness. A lone figure stood beneath the flickering open sign, a briefcase clutched tightly to his chest. "Pick him up," the man in the back commanded. The businessman, impeccably dressed despite the late hour, slid into the front passenger seat. He nodded curtly to Jake, but said nothing, his eyes darting nervously to the rearview mirror. As they pulled away, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about this new passenger. His suit was pristine, almost too perfect for this time of night. And despite the businessman's apparent nervousness, there was a calculated stillness to his movements, like a predator waiting to strike. The car filled with a palpable tension. The woman in the back had gone eerily quiet, while the businessman's breathing seemed unnaturally loud in the confined space. Jake's palms grew sweaty on the steering wheel as he tried to make sense of the situation. "You're doing well, Jake," the man with the gun murmured. "But the night is young, and our game has only just begun. Tell me, what do you see?" Jake swallowed hard, his mind racing. The woman seemed otherworldly, almost ghost-like. But this businessman, there was something predatory in his stillness. Both seemed out of place, yet in entirely different ways. I'm not sure, Jake admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The man chuckled darkly. That's the spirit of the game, Jake. Uncertainty, fear, the gnawing doubt that eats away at your soul. But remember, indecision has its price. Choose wisely, or don't choose at all. The consequences remain the same. The fog grew even thicker as they approached their final destination. Jake could barely see a few feet in front of the car, relying on the GPS to guide him through the twisting streets. They came to a stop in front of an old church, its spire barely visible through the mist. "Your last passenger awaits," the man said, a note of finality in his voice. From the shadows of the church steps, a figure emerged. As it drew closer, Jake's breath caught in his throat. The newcomer was dressed in the robes of a priest, but there was something profoundly wrong about his appearance. The robes seemed to shift and writhe of their own accord, and where the priest's face should have been, there was only a swirling void of darkness. The priest thing opened the back door and slid in next to the woman, who shrank away with a whimper. The businessman in the front seat went rigid, his knuckles white as he gripped his briefcase. "And now, Jake," the man with the gun said, his voice filled with malicious glee. "It's time to make your choice. Who doesn't belong? The woman, the businessman, the priest, or perhaps it's you?" Jake's mind reeled. The woman seemed like a lost soul, possibly not even alive. The businessman radiated danger beneath his polished exterior. And the priest. Jake couldn't even begin to comprehend what that thing might be. But as he looked at each of his passengers in turn, a chilling realization began to dawn on him. Their eyes, all of them, were fixed on him with the same predatory gleam. Even the woman's vacant gaze now held a spark of hungry anticipation. With trembling hands, Jake put the car in park and turned to face his passengers. "It's me," he whispered. "I'm the one who doesn't belong." A moment of terrible silence followed Jake's declaration. Then, to his horror, all of his passengers began to laugh. It started low, a collective chuckle that built into a cacophony of inhuman sounds. The woman's laughter was a keening wail, the businessman's a guttural growl, and the priest thing emitted a sound like wind howling through an empty skull. The man with the gun spoke one last time, his voice now a chorus of 1,000 tormented souls. "Congratulations, Jake. You've won our little game, but I'm afraid winning has its own price." Suddenly, the interior of the car began to stretch and distort, reality bending in ways that made Jake's mind scream in protest. The fog outside pressed against the windows, seeping through impossibly small cracks. Jake tried to scream, but no sound came out. He watched in terror as his passengers began to melt and merge, their forms twisting into something beyond comprehension. As the chaos engulfed him, Jake's last coherent thought was of all the nights he'd spent driving strangers through the city, never knowing who or what he was really letting into his car. In his final moments, he realized that every ride had been a gamble, a spin of the wheel in a game he never knew he was playing. The fog swallowed the car completely, leaving behind nothing but an empty stretch of road. In the distance, a phone chirped with a new ride request, waiting for the next unwitting driver to accept their fate in the endless game of rideshare roulette. For a moment, all was still. Then, slowly, a figure emerged from the mist. It looked like Jake, but there was something fundamentally wrong about its movements, as if someone, or something, was wearing Jake's skin like an ill-fitting suit. It climbed into the driver's seat of a car that hadn't been there a moment before, a cruel smile twisting its features. as the engine roared to life. The thing that was no longer Jake checked the rearview mirror. For a split second, its eyes flashed with an inhuman light, and its grin widened to reveal rows of needle-sharp teeth. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the monstrous visage was gone, replaced by Jake's familiar, friendly face. The car pulled away from the curb, disappearing into the fog as it went to pick up its next fare. And so the game continued, an endless cycle of terror and transformation, with new players drawn in with each ping of a ride request. In the days that followed, the Craigslist ad vanished without a trace. Those who went looking for it found nothing but ordinary requests for odd jobs and second-hand furniture. But in the darkest corners of the internet, whispers began to spread of a terrifying game played on city streets, where drivers and passengers gambled with their very souls. Remember, dear viewers, the next time you browse Craigslist late at night, or summon a ride from an unknown driver, you never know who might be waiting in the shadows. Every click, every ride request is a roll of the dice in the cosmic game of chance. Will you be the lucky one who makes it home? Or will you become just another lost soul in the night, another player in the Rideshare Roulette? Subscribe for more chilling tales from the Nightmare Maestro, and remember, in the vast expanse of the internet and the labyrinth of city streets, when desperation meets opportunity, sometimes the real monster is just a click away.